Well, hello everyone. This is the accompanying presentation to our abstract and poster at the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health Conference, which is taking place in Liverpool this year. It's wonderful to be here. It's certainly a thrill. My name is Zainab Al-Abdullah.
And my name is Fatima Musharbek. Our project was a partnership between Mohammed bin Rashid University of Medicine and Health Sciences, MBRU, and Mediclinic City Hospital in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. We aim to find out the neurodevelopmental outcomes in preterm children using a questionnaire called PARCAR, which stands for the Parents Report of Child's Abilities Revised. PARCAR is a tool intended to be used for children who were born prematurely, so before 37 weeks of gestation. And this is a time-sensitive tool. So parents have to complete their report while their child is still between the corrected age of 23 months and 15 days and to the age of 27 months and 15 days. So around the age of 2, basically. And as we all know, prematurity is already known to be a risk factor for verbal and cognitive delays, which is why implementing PARCAR as a screening tool at the age of 2 is very important, because it will be a lot easier for us to identify the children who need further assessment and support. Using something traditional like the Bailey scales would otherwise be time-consuming and stressful for the parents, practitioners, and of course our young patients. At the age of 2, playing with their Legos is more important to them than attending an appointment they might not actually need.
So we know that PARCAR is an effective tool, and it was created by a team from the University of Leicester, and over the years they've been able to standardize it and validate it over multiple studies. So what PARCAR assesses for are two things. So there are two skills that a child at the age of 2 should be able to start developing. So language and nonverbal cognitive skills. So PARCAR is divided into two sections. So the first section asks about how the child plays and interacts with the world around them. And the second section asks about the words that the child knows and how they can use these words in sentences. So we score both of these sections to get raw scores, as you can see over here. And then we would take these raw scores and convert them into standardized scores using norms tables. And with those standardized scores, we can classify children according to their level of development. So for example, we can say that a child has average development, above average development, or very above average development. And on the other hand, we can have a child with mild delay, moderate delay, or severe delay.
So in this project, we wanted to introduce PARCAR to the UAE for all the children who were both eligible and whose parents submitted their report on time. We looked through their data records to get additional data on their NICU admissions, including birth weight, antenatal steroid, magnesium sulfate, multiple pregnancies, IVH, and chorioamnitis. The timeline of the project spanned over the year of 2021, and our data collection period spanned between April and September. We created a list of patients who were born preterm around 2 years prior throughout this period, and contacted their parents throughout this period as well. Our recruitment process was pretty straightforward. We first contacted the parents by email and attached a fillable PDF version of the questionnaire to make it easier for the parents to submit, and then followed up with a call. The parents who were able to submit PARCAR on time were included in the study, and after assessing the level of their children's language and nonverbal cognitive development, we looked back into the records to find information on their NICU admission. Our data was first collected on Microsoft Excel and then was transformed onto the SPSS software, where we used the two-tailed Fisher chi-test to analyze statistical significance. If you scan this QR code, you'll be able to, you'll be redirected to a link tree where you find our full work in details, including our dissertation, complete PARCAR, a guide to using the norms tables to obtain standardized scores, as well as how to interpret them and assign developmental levels.
So now let's talk about our study population. So at the beginning, we had 120 eligible patients, but only 24 were included in the study because their parents were able to submit PARCA-R on time. So right now, let's take a look at the children who did have some form of delay, okay? So we represented them by using a Venn diagram. So over here, you can see that we used an orange circle to represent those who have language delay, and we represented those who have nonverbal cognitive delay with a green circle. And in total, we had 9 children who had at least one form of delay, so that's above 1/3 of our study sample, right? And in the middle over here, you can see that we have 4 stars representing 4 children who have both forms of delay. And on the orange side of the Venn diagram, you can see that we had 2 children represented by cupcakes who had language delay only. And on the green side, we had 3 children represented by the fish who had nonverbal cognitive delay only. For the record, most of the children who had some form of delay had mild delay, and most of the children who did not have any delay, so the ones who are not included in this Venn diagram, they had average development mostly. So let's take a look at some more characteristics of those who did have a delay. So as you can see in both groups, the majority was female, which is kind of against what the wider literature tells us. And just using the standard conventions for prematurity and birth weight, we were able to find the averages for them. So they were mostly on the older side in both groups, so late preterm births. And the birth weights, they fell within the average of low birth weight. Obviously, none of these variables were statistically significant, and neither were the other variables that we looked at, which were related to NICU admission. So, things like administering certain medications and things like that, none of those were significant.
Okay, so since this is a pilot study and we were expecting to work with a small population, which brings us to our biggest limitation of the study, which is that because of our small sample size, it was too small for us to make statistically significant conclusions. Another issue we had was the low response rate. Some eligible families simply did not respond to our emails and follow-up calls. Some did submit PARCA-R, but it was too late for us to include in the study, and some were expat families that moved outside of the UAE during the COVID-19 pandemic and were therefore hard to reach to. We also experienced that the parents were more receptive to completing PARCA-R after a follow-up call. For some of them felt more comfortable with having the doctor explain everything to them on spot than just reading an email. Some families as well misinterpreted the questionnaire that was given through email, and some were not willing to accept the possibility that their child's could be having a developmental delay. We also face language biases as we only provided PARCA-R in English. Although the parents were able to speak the language fluently, we were not sure about what the language that the childs were speaking at home. And since the UAE is a multicultural country, we were expecting that those children may be learning more than one language at the same time, with different vocabulary and grammar complexity. And because of that, some of the parents told us that they did have difficulty completing the questionnaire. So our advice to them was to complete PARCA-R using their best judgment.
Now, regardless of all of these limitations, we do believe that this was a successful introduction of PARCA-R into the UAE. Now, our next step is that we do still want to expand our research. So our next step is to be able to broaden our scope of reach. And we want to do that through encouraging the Dubai Health Authority, or the DHA, to implement it as part of their own neurodevelopmental screening program, which is called Preterm. Now, Preterm is available on the DHA application, so it's a mobile application, right? And obviously, if we are able to include PARCA-R as part of that, then we would be reaching a much larger population, because many of the people in this country, they do have the DHA app on their phone. So that's one thing. And another thing that we can consider is to make it a little bit more engaging with the parents. So if we can include a built-in calculator, kind of like the one that they have on the official ParkR website, parents would be able to kind of get instantaneous results that they can show their pediatrician or their family doctor the next time that they go to an appointment. Another thing that we do want to do is to be able to translate new versions of ParkR. So we currently have a first draft of an Arabic version of ParkR. And, you know, if that is successful, we're able to get permission, we're able to, you know, fully translate it and validate it, then we would also follow it up with another study where we work on a Hindi version of ParkR. Now, the reason why we chose those two languages specifically is we chose Arabic because it is the official language of the UAE and it is more widespread than English is. And we also wanted to choose Hindi because this is another language that is also widespread over here in the UAE. If you have any questions or any comments or anything that you want to share with us, we will be online throughout the conference period, so you can just shoot us a message and we'll reply to it. And in the end, we'd like to thank you for being such a lovely audience.
Thank you for visiting our poster and interacting with our presentation.